welcome back. I wanted to change gears today and discuss one of my favorite drawing techniques, which is called the grid method. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the grid method, it is essentially taking an image and breaking it down into smaller components, of which you would transfer that grid onto a working surface, and then one by one you would draw in what you see in each square until you got the overall image. It's really simple to do. It can get complex, but the way I'm going to teach you will be fairly simple and you can follow along. Since we're still in quarantine time, you don't need much to do this method of drawing. Honestly, you really just need some sketch paper. It could be any old paper. I prefer Strathmore drawing pads. It's got a nice tooth to the surface where you can certainly shade and do all sorts of things, but it's easy enough and flimsy enough where it, feels like just nice regular old paper, which is a-okay in my book. What's nice about the grid method of drawing is you don't need to be this expert artist to really learn how to do it. And it makes drawing something that's relatively complex by breaking it down into smaller components. It makes it a lot less intimidating. The example I did for my class was these two kittens. I may or may not be a cat person, so I collect all these calendars with various images. I wait till about February when calendars get marked down to like 75 to 90% off, so I pick them up for a couple bucks, and they provide great images to make artwork from. So that's a great tip if you're always looking for art. Of course, you can certainly look for ideas and inspiration online too. But I took this image. Now, if you don't want to mark up your image, because you do need to draw a grid on top of it, you can always scan it. I usually take a picture of it with my phone, and then you can print it out on your home computer, which is essentially what I did here. Now, to create a grid method drawing, you have to know that basically what you draw out, the grid that you draw on your picture, you have to make sure you duplicate it on your piece of paper. And by that I mean, so this image is 7 inches by 7 inches. So each one of my squares, I usually, on the image itself, I usually always do 1-inch squares. So a lot of times I'll have like a 5-inch by 7-inch photo or 4-inch by 6-inch photo. And I draw a 1-inch squared grid on top of that. Now, if I wanted to transfer the same size image onto my piece of paper, I literally just have to do a 7-inch by 7-inch square with 1-inch squares. Now, let's say I had a larger canvas or a larger piece of paper, and I wanted to double the size of this image, then that's simple math. So if I have 1-inch by 1-inch square on here, for this, if let's say this was a 11 by 14-inch sheet, and I want, or actually that wouldn't work with a 7-inch by 7-inch. Let's say this was a larger sheet that would accommodate a 14-inch by 14-inch square grid drawing. Then what I would do is, instead of drawing 1-inch squares, I would draw 2-inch squares onto my paper where I'm transferring the drawing. Why this matters? Well, if you don't want to distort your drawing in any way, you got to make sure this grid is as accurate as possible. I have some professional artist friends that swear by this method. That's, that do huge pieces, and literally they do it by breaking down their grids and being really mathematical and crazy with that. I'm not a numbers girl, so I try to make it as simple as possible. So usually I don't go beyond 2 to 3 times the size of an image that I'm making. A lot of times it's the same one-on-one. So if this is 7 inches by 7 inches on my paper, it's still 7 inches by 7 inches, and it just makes life so much easier. So Tiff, why do I want to do this as opposed to just drawing it? Well, honestly, for years I literally just eyeball it, because I've been drawing since before I could do anything else, really. It's the only thing I can do well. So this is an image I made where I just eyeballed that picture. So here's my little picture, and I eyeballed it. And then, all right, this is the one where the image where I made it with the grid. And as you can see, it's hard to see, but the one on the top I think is a lot more accurate than my image on the bottom. Now granted, I've been drawing for years, you know, so it's easier for me to do this, but for those of you that really are new to drawing or haven't drawn much, really rely on this. You'll be shocked at how accurate and how good your drawings can become. And then obviously once you are done doing the grid, you would erase the grid components. So see what I did here is a piece that I got a little bit further along. I erased the grid around that drawing, and I started doing my details. And I am definitely a pencil gal. If you are using just a number 2 pencil, or I'm going to challenge myself and try to use one of these mechanical pencils today, which kind of scares me because I don't know how well I'm going to do with shading. But if you do decide to use a number 2 pencil, I highly recommend, as you're drawing, using a scrap piece of paper on the top of it. Why? So that way you don't get a bunch of graphite all over your palm and spread it all around your drawing. So that is a very quick explanation of the grid process, and I am going to walk you through it, but I am going to make a much more simpler image to walk you through it today. So as I mentioned, all you really need is some paper, a number 2 pencil of some kind, or if you do have it at home, these great Prismacolor sketch pencils are awesome. An eraser, you can use a white eraser, you can use one of these erasers, whatever's up to you. Or, you know, like I said, plain old number 2 will do just fine, especially if you're just learning this method at home, and any old paper. So let's get started. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out, this is the image I selected. I thought, oh, this will be super easy. Well, we'll see. To transport just a nice little, I'm not even sure what kind of flower that is, but it's a pretty flower, and a piece of blank paper. So it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. So how am I going to transfer that grid? Well, first I have to figure out what kind of grid I want to create over my image. I always print my image out onto a piece of paper before I start drawing. Why? Because I don't mind marking up a nice printed image. And as you can see, I love this ruler. I got it in art school years ago. It's see-through. It's got perfect little squares. It just makes my life so much easier. And it's even better when you actually have it the right side up. Isn't that wonderful? So I'm going to measure how big this is. So this is 8 inches across. So we can even mark that down. 8 inches by, looks like 6 inches. So this is a 6-inch by 8-inch, or an 8-inch by 6-inch piece of paper. And again, I just love 1-inch squares. Makes my life so much easier. So what I'm going to do is at the top of this, I'm going to mark in increments of 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, all the way across. And here we go. Usually on the more complex images, this is where I want to 1, 2, 3, 4. I number them across, and then I do the alphabet going down. And the reason why I do this is because you can have some images with thousands of little squares. So, you know, it makes it easier. Like, oh, I was on square 4B, you know, for instance. So 4B on my canvas or piece of paper, I have that. So here we go, and see, now you might be able to see the sheen now. You have those nice little squares on your image. So now I want to transfer this 8" by 6" rectangle onto my piece of paper. So what I'm going to do, this is 12 inches, so maybe to center it, kind of indented by 2, so that should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's the first part of my square. And then let's see here. So this is a 9 by 12 paper. So basically what I did was going in this direction where it's 12 inches and I want to do 8 inches across, but I want to center that. I just do 12 minus 8, that's 4 inches. Divide 4 inches in half, that's 2 inches. So I have 2 inches going into the paper on either side. And then for the 6 inches, so it's 9 minus 6 is 3, so that's about 1.5 inches. So therefore, you should have it nice and centered. This is something I've been doing for eons since drawing school. Oh my goodness gracious, when I had one poor teacher who was very, math was not his forte, trying to explain this to students, making it very convoluted, and I just kind of quickly did it. He's like, how'd you do it? I said, well, this is how, and you know, he's like, oh my God, that's life-changing. I'm like, really? This is the way I've always done it, but well, it's just easy. It doesn't have to be centered, but I'm one of those OCD-ish people where I like to center things, so go fig. And this part, I'm going to just draw my outside grid, and the reason why I'm doing that is so it's a little bit easier for me to start drawing those 1" segments. And there we go. So now I have a nice little 8" by 6" grid that matches this guy. And if you want, just for the purpose of this video, I am going to number it. This is a fairly simple grid, so you don't really have to go this far when you're doing something fairly simple, unless you want to, when you're just learning. Not a bad idea. But again, both these grids should be as equal as possible, okay? Okie dokie. And to begin drawing, so I'm literally just focusing on capturing the flower, okay? So I noticed in basically squares 1A, 2A, and 3A, there's no flower, but in 4A, I don't know if you, 4A, we do have a little bit of the petal kind of breaking through. So what we're gonna do is in square 4A, what I'm gonna try to do, again, so I don't smear too much of the graphite I just drew on there, I'm gonna use my little cheat card, but I am going to draw that little flower tip in 4A. I almost drew it in the wrong square, So in square 4A, we are going to draw that little bit of a flower, so, and just a very bit of this tip. So in 4A, I'm trying to, as much as possible, and you guys, you know, you can obviously tweak this as you're going into each square. When I go into 4B, if I notice that I don't really want to, my line is not quite meshing up with this line, you know, you can adjust. But for now, we're just gonna draw what we see. So there's 4A. We're gonna go to 5A, and we got a bit more going on in 5A. We got a bit more of that larger center petal, but it starts out small right here in the corner, and then it kind of goes right up, right up, right up, and then it kind of crests and begins to fall again just a little bit before we go into 6A. And I noticed there's a couple little, you could start adding some of those shadow details. I mean, not immensely. Wow, this is not fun with a mechanical pencil. What was I thinking? Oh well. So anyway, with the mechanical pencil, if that's all you have, you can draw, but I'll tell you, it's not going to be as fun shadowing. But hey, some of you actually, I have some friends that draw with nothing but a mechanical pencil. I don't know how they do it. They're obviously much more talented than me, but turns out some of those lines I was seeing were actually petals. How about that? So there's a petal there that goes into 6A. So now, and I am actually gonna, I found this image on Dr. Google. I will have a link to this image below if you want to follow along with me on this, you know, but here we go. And that's about, oops, you know, in this petal, it's got like 2 petals. So it's one in front, one behind from what I'm seeing. And then there's another petal that goes, starts in 6 and will be completed, or not completed fully, but goes into 7. And I got the angle a little bit steeper than I wanted to. That's okay. That's okay. Wow, the eraser is really nice on this, I will say. A+ on mechanical pencil eraser ability. And I'm always a fan of drawing lighter before you draw darker. And why is that, Tiff? Because it's so much easier to take away light than it is to take away dark. So keep that in mind, you know, especially if you need to tweak your drawing. So right now I have hopefully a relatively nice view of the top portion of that flower. And instead of starting all the way from here, because my flower is predominantly in the right side of my picture, I am going to start over here and I'm going to keep drawing. And at this point, I'm probably going to stop talking and I will do a nice little flash forward video montage. So at this point, I have completed transferring my flower image that I drew a grid over onto my sheet of paper. And you have my finished flower there. From here, this is where I will start erasing my grid mark lines. So I have found out through the process of drawing this paper that this eraser on these mechanical pencils is kind of the bomb.com, so to speak, but very easy to erase and draw over. Also, I should have pointed out earlier in the video, I will make a little mention of it in my when I start editing this video. Make sure that you're not drawing too much detail. I mean, you do want to get maybe some areas where you want to mark out where it's going to be darker versus lighter and so on. But if you draw out too much detail, here's what happens to it. As I erase, you're going to erase some of those detail marks, which may not be at all what you want to do. So that's the grid method of drawing in a nutshell. From here, you would go through, you would start adding some details such as shadows and highlights and lowlights and all that fun stuff. You know, there's a whole, I could give you a whole spiel about how to apply that. I was a pastel artist for many years, and what are pastels? Pastels are chalky crayons, essentially. How is the best way I could describe it to you. And one of the main things that the initial teacher that taught me how to use pastels taught us was to never blend with your finger, to always blend using the medium itself. And I got very good at not only with my pastel mediums, basically blend in with my pastel sticks. I started doing that with my drawings too. I no longer used my finger, or they have stumps of rolled, tightly wound paper that you can use to shadow. And hey, if that's what you want to use, I say use it. There's no right or wrong in the art world. Just something that you know, over the years, I prefer not to use. When you erase your little lines, of course, go back over and redraw in the areas of your sketch that you erased while getting rid of those pesky little grid marks. But from here, this is a perfect example of a drawing that I will start to shade. So looking at my picture and, you know, using my own imagination too. You know, maybe flower petals aren't super straight, so maybe I will start kind of deepening that edge since the background is darker, and I'm going to start going through. And now here's the true test. Just how well can I draw and blend with a mechanical pencil? And it turns out not so bad. So basically, I'm going to go through and I'm going to start shadowing. The tips of the petals seem to be darker. I'm going to shadow tip of this, which is interesting. My instinct is to want to shadow the areas behind the petals and leave the tips of the petals light, but I guess this flower, the petals, whatever, you can put in the comments what you think this beautiful flower is. Of course, when I look up the flower again, I had saved it on the link on my bookmark page. Will probably tell me what the flower is, but right now, as far as me filming this video, I do not remember. And I hate to say that, there's a lot of, prior to the days when the internet was a big thing, you know, a lot of artists used to have what they call art clip bins, where you would find, like, you know, various pictures and things from magazines or newspapers or whatnot, and save them in these, albeit boxes or drawers. And as you can imagine, you could probably collect hundreds, if not thousands, of those. So in my early college career, my days when I was learning to be an illustrator, I had a lot of old clips and things of saved aside. Now I'm doing the same thing on my computer with bookmarking images, saving images. You know, it's like, oh, that's really pretty. I would love to paint that someday. Oh, save. You know, just be careful when you're saving off the web. Make sure it's an image people will want you to, quote, save. Or if not, if it is an image you end up painting, you know, and you've paid it verbatim to what the image is, you know, it's always nice to give a little shout out to whoever image it was you used. So keep that in mind as well. All you would-be artists, which I hope you guys do become. So see, from here, as you're doing your details, you start getting darker and darker in some areas to start bringing out the bits of your flower. But it doesn't take much, you know, just a little bit of time. And this is definitely different using a mechanical pencil, but I kind of like it. Maybe I'll do a whole tutorial on just using different kinds of pencils. What effects can you get? But it's interesting. And again, I'm totally using this little card to keep my hands relatively clean, and also, quite honestly, to keep me from smearing my drawing all across my piece of paper. Nothing's worse than getting a beautiful drawing where you want it, and you go to move to something else, do that area, lift up your hand, and realize you've just smudged everything you had worked on earlier. Oh, not fun. So this is definitely the best way I've found. And usually I use scrap pieces of paper, but right now I've been studying for getting my real estate license, which is very exciting, so I can actually make some real money for my family. Way! And have all these little index cards lying around. I thought, oh, I'll just use one for this purpose, but it does a really nice job, actually. So that's it. So please let me know if you have any comments below, if there's anything else you want to see or learn, or if you want me to go into further detail on how to add detail to your drawing. Comment in the section below. I'm going to leave all the tools I used to create this drawing today, and the image I used to create this drawing. And if you do happen to make your own grid drawings, you know, and you actually finish them, I'm one of those. I have a million unfinished pieces of artwork at home, like these beautiful little kittens. I mean, someday I'm going to finish it. I swear I will. You know, post it in the comments below. I'd love to see it. So thank you so much. If it hasn't floated up already, hit the subscribe button if you do want to see more tutorials by yours truly. And I'll see you in the next video. All right, bye.